Hello, and welcome back to this episode of Pros and Content. I'm your host, Ellen Schwartz, and I am joined today by two incredible content leaders. Brooklin Nash and Sam Hembree are co-founders at Beam Content. Hi, Brooklin. Hi, Sam.
Hi.
It's great to have you here. I wanted to kick off just understanding a bit more about you. So, Brooklin, give us a little bit about your background and what led you here to Beam Content.
Yeah, I'll try to give the 30-second version. I started as a freelance writer about 9 years ago, and then about 4 years ago, transitioned into more full-fledged content marketing for my clients, and then spent a couple of years in-house at a couple different startups. The latest one at Outreach, where I worked alongside Sam. And through that experience, just realized a couple of things. One, I think there's a big opportunity for the type of content that we're creating for our clients now. And two, that I learned a ton being full-time, but I really liked doing my own thing. My wife and I had been freelancing for a long time, so we decided to jump back out and do our own thing again. And then a few months later, Sam joined us, and here we are with Beam.
Hooray. And if there's ever a moment to be self-employed, I feel like you've found it. You've hit that one, the timing right for that. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Sam, what brought you to Brooklyn and to Beam Content?
Yeah. So I'm Sam, and I got my start in marketing at Outreach 3 years ago as like a growth associate. And I started with a heavy focus on social media, started running our podcast, and eventually moved from content production of all sorts to more of like overseeing all the content channels like virtual events, email, blog, and social. And I've always loved being a part of social media stuff, whether that's like running LinkedIn takeovers or whatever. And yeah, that's where I met Brooklin. And so it was really exciting when Brooklin and Becca reached out like in January of this year. And yeah, it brought me on board to get to be the creative person who does our social media strategy for our clients and the other creative offerings. So it's been a lot of fun.
All the stuff we're not good at.
It's nice to find someone with complementary skills. Like that's the case no matter where you work. So that's incredible. And I wanted to talk a little bit about today, specifically rock content and this idea that you guys have of not just redistributing it, but repurposing it. And I wanted to phrase it that way because I think you'll see around marketing town, that people say repurpose, but what they're actually doing is redistributing. So someone will create a blog post and they say, well, repurpose it for social, for a video, for something. But what you're saying, and the reason I thought it would be great to talk to you guys, is that you are actually saying a piece of rock content can serve many purposes throughout its life within your funnel. So taking one step back, why don't you outline what you would expect to see when we talk about what is a piece of rock content, and then we'll dive into the actual repurposing up.
Yeah. I think probably the clearest definition would be how you plan to distribute it and what the purpose of the content is. Because it can be something that lives natively on your website. It can be a PDF. There's a lot of different formats it can take. It can be a guide, a white paper, point of view, whatever. But I think I like the word rock content. A piece of rock content can be used across nearly all of your channels. Like you can use it for your email marketing, you can use it for social, you can use it for sales even, whereas something else might serve one purpose. This is for our email list. This is an SEO article that will pull in organic traffic, and it's serving one purpose for one channel versus having the opportunity to serve all your channels or multiple channels.
So a few examples in there I heard would be a big ebook or a downloadable guide, something that is longer format, but also not something you're creating with only one channel or one audience in mind.
Yeah. Or 1 month or 1 quarter. It's something that you can come back to.
Oh, I like that too. So it's a lot longer view. Exactly. Great. So talk to me a bit about this idea then behind repurposing it. What does that mean to you?
I'd like to hear Sam's on this. I think social is the most unique element here because you had something unique in your notes on. It's not just like the it's not just chopping it up different ways. It's actually repurposing, which is something we're trying to do with social.
Hmm.
I think there's like a ton of ways that you can repurpose content for social. And so like these rock pieces of content, usually there's like lists you can pull out of them. There's if the content starts with an interview, there's video clips that you can pull out of those interviews that can be used in different ways on social. We will pull quotes from people. It's really great when you can give shout outs to the people that are contributing to your content, and pulling images and graphics, like seeing how you can basically take the information and present it in a different way that may resonate with people who like to consume things in different formats. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways we like to pull and repurpose that rock content.
And the important
Yeah.
part there is it's not, sorry, Ellen, it's not doing it in a way where it's pointing back to whatever the ebook or guide is. It can stand on its own. So if you're pulling a quote out, that quote can stand on its own. If you're pulling a list, that can stand on its own. So people more at the top of funnel, or who aren't even necessarily a prospect yet, can engage in a way that you're becoming like an educator and an authority in the space, rather than here's this ebook, or here's like a summary of the ebook, check out the link in the comments, and then pointing to a gated link where you're solely pointing to that lead generation.
Yeah.
So just to sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I just love that. I was just thinking like it's important to recognize that your audience is valuable, like on social, or even if they're not moving down the funnel, your audience is valuable. Like Brooklyn said, if you're the number one source for information on your topic, or if you're helping people get better at their jobs, that's not going to go unrecognized, even if they're not clicking through. Like the goal doesn't always have to be clicking through to that next piece of content.
Yeah. And I think that's what's important about what the two of you just described. So what I heard Sam say is a lot of, you're going to not just take clips and like a verbatim piece of this rock content and stick that onto LinkedIn. It's that you'll take the content and reformat in a way that is unique to that channel to serve your purpose. So I think you mentioned like a listicle. So taking it and saying on LinkedIn, or in an image even, saying here's 1, 2, 3 things you can do. And then Brooklyn, to your point, saying that's where it lives. There is no reason to take them from the channel they've chosen over to a form on your website, which actually brings up, which I didn't prep either of you for, there's a big debate. Like there's a gated and ungated discussion among content marketers. And I think any marketer, right? So is it to gate or not to gate? It's so iconic. It was a hashtag on one of my former teams. We talked about it every time. And it sounds like what you're saying is actually, in a way, this is a ton of ungated, free to the world content. It just so happens that it's living in other channels.
In bits and pieces, yeah. So I don't have a hard stance on gating or ungating. I think gating makes a ton of sense still. I think the important part is you have to deliver on your promise. And I think probably 8, 9 times out of 10, a gated asset doesn't really deliver on its promise. It's either product marketing disguised as helpful content, or it's not even all that helpful content. So if you're going to gate, make it worth it and give away a lot of that for free. Like you can still get a lot of like quality leads by gating a longer form asset, but that doesn't mean that you have to hide all of that away. You can still use it on your other channels. I think what I have seen done well is where content by itself is often ungated, but then if there's like templates or something that's more in the weeds, those things will be gated. And I think that's typically a good way to do it.
It's a nice way to say there's a lot of information, but ultimately what we feel is proprietary or what only we could provide, that might be something that you put a gate in front of that.
Yeah, I think that can work well.
Mm.
Although I do, as a buyer or reader or audience member, I do appreciate when things aren't gated.
I'm going to say Sam is looking at a little side-eyed at you. I'm not going to lie.
No, it's another strategy I've seen is, I don't know if it's to build excitement or whatever, where they like gate for maybe the first week and then it's ungated after the fact. Could be an interesting.
Interesting. What do you feel? What kind of data do you feel a marketer would get from that? That's interesting. I haven't seen that.
maybe it's collecting like the initial interest and then unleashing it. I'm not sure.
It also seems
Yeah,
soft dating where like the first third or the first chapter is ungated if it's living natively on the site versus a downloadable, right? And then you gate it further down, like what you'd see on, I don't know, New York Times or First Round Review or whatever.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. That too, that kind of tells you that anybody who's made it through that first third is at least the right audience for the rest of it. And so hopefully they would find the value.
Yeah. A couple of our clients, that's how we set it up. Or mark as early as the Google Doc saying, this is probably a good place to gate it.
Okay. So, yeah, both interesting strategies. And I'm sorry to have taken us down such a rabbit hole. We can get a bit back on track, but I think it's all related, right? So you're trying to drive people to your brand. And I think part of this is looking at your brand holistically or your product offering holistically and saying there are going to be a lot of places that your audience lives. How can you find them? The other half of this is there are going to be many stages in your funnel that person might find themselves or that you might find them. So not only can you take this piece of rock content and put it in different channels, you actually have this idea that it can serve different parts of your funnel just by taking the content that you've already created and reframing it or repackaging it. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the best example is one of our recent projects. We're working with a gifting platform, which primary audience is sales, obviously, but they also do ABM, employee engagement, things like that. And we're running a series of interviews with their customers. But instead of it being a typical customer success story or case study, like here's their problem, here's how this platform stepped in to help, and here are the outcomes. It's more focused on the champion at the company and how they run their playbook, whether it's for employee engagement, their ABM, their biz dev. So we're going a lot more in the weeds with them. And then our client, the platform, is the backdrop and foundation, but not the focal. The focal point is the guide and the playbook. And with that, I think it serves top of funnel because it's educating around the use of gifting and unique ways people are using it. It's more middle or the bottom of funnel, I should say, because you can use it as a case study still and say, look, these were the outcomes that they used using our platform. Here's how we partnered with them. And then it's honestly customer marketing too, because they can go to their existing customers and say, hey, we know you're using our platform for this particular use case. Here's a playbook on how another one of our customers are running it if you want to try to take it and run with it. So it's not like thinking through customer interview has to be bottom of funnel case study. It's more of like, how can we broaden that perspective a little bit? And we're pulling in the social assets. That's what Sam's working on, where we're taking the video clips and the quotes and things like that, where those can stand on their own on social. So it's even above whatever comes before top of funnel, like awareness building
Right.
on the top end.
Yeah, I love that because when the reader is reading like this case study or consuming like a piece of it on social, they're going to be reading it for this is somebody who is just like me, or this is somebody who's doing my job, who loves their job. Their job is rewarding, efficient, whatever. Like they put themselves in their shoes and they're going to associate that brand with the success of people who are like them. So I think that's really cool because it's like you said, most of the time it is more middle or bottom of funnel, but it actually positions it really well for putting it out on social and having it be more of a awareness play too.
Yeah. And I like the way you've reframed that too, to say it's a bit more speaking one-to-one to your end user. I actually happened to just see a great Twitter thread this morning talking about David Ogilvy. And one of his tips would be, it's like, you as an advertiser, you're not writing to the whole world, you're writing to one person. And that helps your copy be a lot more personable and a lot more like you're actually talking to the person who you'd like to ultimately buy your product. So it feels, I think in software and B2B, it winds up getting really abstract really quickly. I know I get caught in this idea that I'm talking like on a stage to people, to like I'm doing a presentation about something instead of how I would just speak like on this podcast, just the two of you, and try to start describing what we solve for, what results you start to see, why that matters then to you in your role. So I think that's all really important to reframe it that way and say there are ways that it's going to matter to someone who's as you said, like before the funnel, just even looking at trying to understand what they're even doing here versus someone who's figured it out and said, this looks like a good match.
I'm writing that one down as some tweet inspiration.
Tweet inspiration. I'll try to remember to link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just saw that. But really cool, you guys. And I think there's a topic that can blend these two things, which is just digging a little bit deeper into social. How are you guys using it? And I would say, without giving away too much, like for yourself, but also for your clients to both create demand, but then capture demand. And I'll just making it personal again, whereas I've been in marketing for about 10 years. All of a sudden, there's a lot of talk about how you need to be creating demand, not capturing demand. It's demand, not lead gen. It's lead gen, not lead capture. There's a lot swirling, and it's kind of a big topic on LinkedIn, I would say too, because it's everybody trying to sort out which is which one do you do first? How do you set this up for success? That was a really long-winded way of saying, how are you combining these rock content pieces and the way you repurpose them with a successful social strategy or whatever else that might look like?
Yeah. I like what you said in terms like people have been talking more about creating demand versus like capturing it. And I think that is the first step with social is like creating the demand, building the audience. And I think I see a lot of people skipping that step. So a lot of times you see the company accounts like with an insignificant maybe number of followers or like lower engagement, and they're making asks, attend this webinar, come to this event, take this survey, whatever. And it's like falling on deaf ears because they haven't already built that engaged audience that trusts them. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about before of viewing that audience as valuable, even if they're not jumping down the funnel and creating content or taking that rock content and turning it into these pieces that stand alone on social to build trust with that audience so that you can make asks later.
Sure. And I would think too, knowing that your audience is connected, as long as you have the right audience, they're connected to more of the right people. They're going to be talking within industries, they'll be talking within communities. So just because that person might be the right person at the wrong company, they'll help amplify your brand if you're providing a lot of value.
Definitely.
That kind of summarizes our marketing approach too. Like it's not SaaS related because we're a service business, but for us, it very much has been about creating demand because we're being very hyper specific about what we do and what we don't do and who we work with and who we don't work with and why we're doing what we're doing. And that like in making that shift a couple of months ago, I think our sales conversations have started to change because by the time we get on a call with somebody and we're saying what we do and how we work, and they're like, this is what I was looking for. And I didn't even realize this is what I was looking for. So just that like, differentiation is what's helped. And the reason I'm saying this, and I'm not trying to just toot our own horn, but you saying like the referral piece has been key because there's tons of people who engage with our content on social that are not going to become clients. But when they are connected with somebody who is, they end up referring them our way if they hear something that matches what they know we do. If it's interview based, if they're looking for help with LinkedIn, if they're talking about how boring the content their current agency or freelance writer is what they're working on for them, they're like, oh, maybe you should go talk to Beam. And it's been, I don't know, it's just been really fun to see that over the last couple of months.
That's really fun. Congrats on that success. And I do think too that a lot of listeners would understand that a referral is worth far more than the 10,000 of the wrong people on LinkedIn. But I also wanted to point out to you what you described, though, is even in going through that own exercise of being hyper specific for your audience is what a lot of people would do with an ICP. It's saying, is my product addressable to the entire market? Yes, of course. Obviously, I work at Knotch and I think everybody should have Knotch. It turns out my sister doesn't work in marketing. She probably doesn't need it. So then like really just saying, all right, that's not the right person. That's not the right person. The right people looks like the right people. The right person looks like this. And that's exactly who we want to talk to. It's a hard exercise then to start saying no to people who come in. But it sounds like what you're describing is that it's worth it. It's worthwhile to say, but this is the result. more valuable discussions with your sales team.
Yep, that's exactly it. I know it's off base of what our original conversation was, but we spent 2 months, Sam, going through those exercises before we ever wrote a single line of copy for the website or created the deck. Was like literally going 10 levels deep on who our ideal customer is, what our deal breakers are. So when we know when it's time to say no, what our core offer is. And it's just been super beneficial.
Yeah, I think it can be scary at first, especially if you guys are building from the ground up to say where like pretty much any client is an increase in clients and this is great. Whereas if we're looking more for, you need to pivot your TAM or you need to pivot your ICP or your personas, whoever it is that you're targeting, it's really hard to scale back and see that those lead gen numbers are going to drop or that your form fill outs might drop. Like something that, like there's going to be that initial drop off the cliff in your metrics. But in the long game, it's worth that. It's because you know that you'll be talking to the right people. So off topic, schmuff topic, we're talking about everything here.
But it does come full circle, because if you do that as a SaaS brand, like you mentioned earlier, Ellen, you're going to have higher conversions by the time that comes to fruition, right? Because you're taking the time to ask, what is my ideal audience actually asking and what do they want to know? So then you don't fall into the trap of writing an SEO article that somebody's asking about particular question about Facebook advertising, and you're starting the article by saying, what is Facebook advertising? That's not questions your audience is even asking. So why are you taking the time to answer it? Like, it's actually getting in the weeds with the questions your ideal buyers are actually asking and the information that they need.
I like that a lot too. It's understanding also the level that your customer's at. They don't need the basics. They need your answer.
Yeah, for sure. There's one example, Sam, I think I might need you to fill in the gaps on this because I'm not remembering the company, but they had all these ungated, going back to gating versus ungated, really in-depth guides. Like we're talking 30, 40 pages, but it wasn't fluff. It was very much, here's your tactical guide to XYZ. Just went really in depth. And they pulled snippets or sometimes almost full guest posts from articles that guest writers had written for their blog into the long form asset. So number one, they were getting hyper specific about the content they were creating. And number two, they were going back to repurposing the content that they already had up. And they were bringing personality into the content along the way, because it was saying, look, these aren't our words. This is, this CEO and co-founder at this advertising agency and her 1, 2, 3 on how to do XYZ. So it's just by connecting the dots a little bit more with the content that you're creating and getting specific about what you're creating and why and for who, you're just going to end up with a lot more content, a lot better content, I should say.
Sometimes both. I think the discussion of more versus better is a great topic for the next podcast we have you guys on.
Yes.
But thank you so much, you guys. I think this has been a really good conversation. It's really helpful to hear about the differences in distribution versus gated versus repurposing. I think it's been really helpful. So thank you for that. And I'm wrapping up because we've come to the lightning round. Do you feel like you're ready for these?
I told Sam before that I was reads up on lightning rounds for some reason. I'm like, I don't know.
You sent them ahead of time, you guys.
I know.
They were fun questions.
All right. Well, hopefully you don't freeze. And if you do, you can toss it back and forth to each other. We're going to make it through this. The first question, though it might be a little scary, is what keeps you up at night as you do your job? I think, and this would, for me, it'd be as a marketer, but I know it's somewhat different for you as co-founders.
This is not probably like the typical, I don't know. It's a very literal answer. I was thinking when the gig is launching the next day, which maybe doesn't, it feels like whenever there's like a fun campaign going out or something, I'm always just like the fun, like nervous, excited, and just running through all the possibilities of what could happen or whatever.
Yeah. It's like first day of school vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cool vibes.
Brooklyn, anything for you?
A cop out, but I feel like I've tweeted this before, especially as a marketer. literally nothing. Like this is B2B marketing. Like nothing is an emergency. It's really fun, but like we're not talking about like life or death situations here. So we're having a ton of fun, like building the team. So as long as like our team is taken care of, I'm sleeping just fine.
Good. That seems like it's a solid indication that you've got a good business going too. If you're not even as a co-founder, and you're counting your business in months right now, aren't you?
Yeah, month 3 now.
Okay, so well done you. I think that's a sign of success. I will say one of my favorite lessons from like my very first big girl job, I will give a shout out to my former coworker, Brian Shepard. So we were working at a nonprofit that did a lot of events in schools. And so balloons were actually a critical part of events. And we were the keepers of the balloons as the marketers. We ran out, and you would have thought that it was life or death. And he's a very quiet guy. We shared an office at the time. Someone had come in talking about how there are no more balloons. And I apologized and they left. And he just slowly turned around and said, "It's just balloons. No one's shooting at us." And I feel like, isn't that what you said? It's nice that because we're in this particular business, for the most part, you can take a breath before something becomes a crisis and say, can this wait? Can we do this? Instead of it truly needing to be CNN news ticker, literally put this out right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like good reminder, Brooklyn.
Agency vibes, and we're trying to not capture the typical agency vibes. We'll see.
Good point. Good point. Okay, next question. Is there a marketing campaign that you point to as a go-to? Something you would run given, budgets, no question.
That changes it.
No question.
Oh, sorry. Put the budget back on if you want.
No, I'm just teasing. I think I put down LinkedIn takeover. That is something that I've run like multiple times for multiple different like announcements, launches. It's the thing that I like to go back to. I just love like pulling all the pieces together, everything that has to do with it, figuring out the angle, like why it even matters to people outside of your company, and then helping people put their own spin on it. It's just it's a fun campaign that I always enjoy.
So when you say LinkedIn takeover, is that one person to another person? Is that a company to company? What does that look like?
Yeah. So normally, like as many people as I can get involved. I've done it before. Like we used to do it at Outreach, and we had a big one where I think we set a goal like 500 outreachers need to share this thing. And I think we got like halfway there. We got 250 or something people sharing on LinkedIn. But it was just, typically I share it with as many people as are involved or related to the thing launching or being announced.
Very exciting. Cool.
Sam's got a great article on it called Always Be Launching. Maybe we add it to the show notes, maybe?
Absolutely, we do.
It's everything she's just describing, like a how-to.
I love it. What about you, Brooklyn?
I think, what would you call it? So at Outreach, we did outreach on outreach, like basically how outreachers use outreach to do X, Y, Z. And then we just repeated that for a client recently as a series. So you interview 5, 6, 7, 8 different people in their role, how they use the tool. And I just think it's a super useful campaign to do as a series, even if it's 1 or 2 a month, because you're getting back to the in the weeds type of content that your ideal buyers are looking for. And you have those people available to you. If you're a product marketing tool, you have product marketers on your team. Why not talk to your product marketers about how they're using the tool for product marketing, and instead of trying to spin something up on your own? I just think it's a super, maybe not easy, but a really consistent, in-depth way to both leverage the resources and people you already have available and create the type of content that your ideal buyers will want to engage with.
Said. And I will say too, make sure that you're using your own product. If it's something that you can use. The number of times someone on a call is, okay, but how are you using it is actually, and then if you've got an immediate response back, it's really powerful. So yes, applaud, golf claps to that one. Very good. Okay, so a somewhat more fun one. Where is the best place you've traveled?
That's a hard one.
Oh,
Maybe it's a little bit cheating because we lived there for a year, but my wife and I were in Israel for a year, for a summer in college, and then a year after we got married after college. And it's such a unique place. We're wanting to go back next summer for a 10-year. We just love it. The food, people, Tel Aviv, the water. It's just such a unique spot.
yeah. Incredible. That's incredible that you were able to live there.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And congrats on 10 years. Also very significant.
Thanks. Got another year to
But
go, but we're at 9 in a few weeks.
okay, I won't jinx it then. Sorry about that. Sam, what about you?
So I think I have to go with Spain. Like it was my first year in college, and I got to go to 10 different cities in 10 days and eat all the food. So yeah, like paella in Valencia, and then the oldest chocolate factory, eating churros in Madrid. I just like,
Hot chocolate and churros.
The best.
yeah, it's definitely way up there in like coolest experiences.
Oh, for sure. I spent maybe a couple of months there at a moment in my life where I was able to travel randomly. So worth it. Okay. And then final lightning round question. What was your pandemic cliche? And by this, I mean there's Wordle, sourdough bread, Tiger King. A lot of people had some big life moment happen. What was it for you?
I feel like all of them. I definitely had the Tiger King, all that good stuff. But
Were you actually the trendsetter? Is that why everybody's doing all these things?
but banana bread is a staple in my house now. That was the thing that didn't go away. Now I pretty much almost always have banana bread muffins or something.
Is there a recipe that is like your go-to, or have you at this point fiddled with the recipe so much that it's yours?
I do. I have one that I remember that I just,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I'm putting all the fall spices in it right now because it's almost fall.
Sure. That's a great idea. What about you, Brooklyn?
Besides a lot more time reading, that's the most boring but honest answer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's maybe like fitting in with the Great Resignation, because it really was like I started full-time jobs before the pandemic, and then last October, almost a year ago, was like, I think I want to do my own thing again. And it wasn't for any negative reasons about company or the team or anything. It was more out of just looking for what's next, which has seemed to be the trend.
Very cool. I think cliche enough. What all were you reading? I did a lot of reading too, but I feel like bettering yourself, that kind of falls under there.
Yeah, but not really. I do not read like self-help or business books, or I've gone down a Stephen King binge the last 18 months, going back to John Steinbeck, things like that.
The classics. Cool. Very good. Well, thank you, Brooklyn, and thank you, Sam. My final question that I'm asking everybody is just, what would you like people to take away from this episode?
I think for me, it's just like the valuing your audience, no matter where they're at in the funnel. It takes time to build that relationship and earn trust, especially coming from like the social perspective. Yeah. So don't neglect that piece.
Love it. Brooklyn, what about you?
I think that you probably have more content to work with than you realize already. So take a step back and look at what you have up, whether it's SEO articles to update or guest posts that you can rework and work into long form, or stuff that you can start pushing through to social. Like in all likelihood, unless you're 3 months old, you have a lot of content up already. So instead of constantly going on to the next campaign and content for the next quarter, look back at what you have and how you can best leverage that.
Also, wise words. Thank you so much to both of you. Where should people connect with you if they'd like to learn a little bit more?
LinkedIn and Twitter.
Okay, very good. We'll link to those in the show notes then.
Beamcontent.co for the business.
Oh, why don't you repeat that? I think I talked over you.
Sorry. Or beamcontent.co is our website too.
Very good. Thank you both again for sharing your time and your expertise. To our listeners, thank you for spending your time with us. If you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to Pros and Content wherever it is you're listening. This season, I'm talking with digital growth and demand gen marketers about audience journey strategy and metrics. You can find us online at knotch.com. That's knotch.com. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Brooklyn.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you.